It is Monday, July 28th, and it's getting pretty late with Jake Landau. Folks, I've got a very special guest for you tonight. I've been a pretty big fan of his content and his work for a long time, so it's fun to have him on my show. His name is Steve Boots, and you will know him from Twitch TV and other places. He's a former teacher, content creator, a political commentator, and I make most of my day's news, not most of my day's news diet, but most days he is in my news diet. Not most of my news diet, Steve. You do need a diversity of news, but you definitely are one of my people. So happy to have you on the program.
I'm definitely not a one-stop shop, but I'm glad to be here.
No, absolutely.
Appreciate you having me on.
And I mean, like, one of the reasons I really like is that because before you were doing political commentary and content creation online, and journalism, if not journalism adjacent stuff, you were a teacher, and I really like that because my grandmother was a teacher, two of my aunts, two of her daughters were teachers, so like I am really, really pro teacher. I like people who teach. I'm of the general opinion that teaching in schools is one of the most important things in our society because I would like to not grow up in a world of stupid people.
Yeah, no, being a teacher definitely has been a big influence on me and what I've and the work that I've done. So
I can definitely see it in like the way like you talk during your videos. It's like, I mean, one, you have every teacher kind of needs just general like speaking skills in general for like presenting information because it's the whole job. But like, it's also just like in the tone of voice, like the way you present things, like it's almost nostalgic in a way for 12 years of my life and some years at university when the professors were good at it.
It's one of those things where I always tell people, like, I didn't leave teaching so much as just found a larger classroom, right? Like it's the same basic approach. My specialty isn't necessarily having, earth-shattering, groundbreaking insights. I'd like to think I'm moderately insightful, but I think the thing that sets me apart is making things digestible and making things really easy to understand and making politics more accessible for people who don't have the antecedent knowledge of politics. Like a lot of people are walking in and they're like, okay, well, how does this part of parliament work? And it's easy to think like that's really basic. But then you realize, like, not everybody knows that stuff. And if you approach it that way, I think it makes it much more accessible and much more enjoyable.
Right. And I know from, I was watching one of your videos earlier in the week. It was your piece about the CBC and how Mark Carney had said in the election that he wanted to increase the funding so much they wouldn't need to have any ads anymore. And instead, he's asking them to just find 15% budget cuts, which I know the current CEO said, well, as you said in your piece, there will probably be job cuts as a result if those recommendations are accepted. And I know you were talking about how important the CBC is in terms of educating the public from a different perspective than the classroom may be, but in the same way that like TVO does in Ontario, like, because you said an educated public is less, it's harder to misinform them. It is harder to mislead them. Like when, so education, like it should be more valued in our society than it is. I'm twofold on university because on the one hand, I think that university should just be free. There are countries around the world which do this. Germany does it, but of course you have to be good enough to get into the program. And they also do it for international students too, which I don't think we would ever consider doing in Canada with the current state of affairs, unfortunately. But on the other hand, it's weird to say this, but I feel like a lot of university professors don't have the same like pedagogical skills as like a primary or secondary school teacher. Like a lot of them are good lecturers, but you get what I mean in that there isn't like the same like dedicated, like it's not like how you had to go to like teachers college and get like dedicated instruction in how to be a teacher separate from your actual major in university. Like that's what
You're right, but it's also a separate skill set.
It
right?
is.
It's also its own skill set. It's its own sort of distinct thing. Like it's sort of one of those things where like, are you going for somebody who's an expert in teaching, or are you going for someone who's an expert in subject area?
But that,
Because it's not always the most realistic to be both. So like when a prof is maybe not as proficient a teacher as you'd hope, like I get that it's frustrating, but I also get how it comes to be.
right. Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I
It's
mean?
like, because they're not selecting for best instructor, they're selecting for people who produce research or people who produce publications and journals. Like, and ultimately, the instruction part of university is, in a way, become more like ancillary to the part of the university that makes the university money or brings them prestige.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're right, it is a different skill set, but in a way that's why I do wish like the ones they decide should teach like class sections should probably be given some form of instruction in how to teach. Like,
So a lot of universities do that. A lot of universities will have a requirement that they take some sort of fundamentals course or fundamentals training to make sure that they've got the skill set for it.
that's valid, but I know in Ontario we put actual like school teachers through a lot more, like in primary and secondary, through a lot more of a rigmarole like than we put like university professors through in terms of their actual teaching qualifications. I know
Mhm.
you need to have a normal university degree, so like a matter of subject area expertise. Then you need to have your general teaching education. But then you also, in addition to both of those at your teacher's college, you need to take instruction and specific teaching skills for that subject area. And
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same in your province, but it's just like, well, why don't we require that for the university professors who teach? Like, especially since they seem to get paid a bit more money, like, surely we can hold them to a bit of a higher standard.
True, but there's also an important distinction here. One of the things that's happened at universities across the country is that in many, many cases, you're not in many, many cases getting a professor or even,
You're getting
an
an
adjunct or
adjunct.
associate. No, you're getting in many cases a sessional lecturer,
Oh, that's
who
yeah,
are,
even
you
worse.
know, well, not worse necessarily, just less qualified and much less
I
compensated
mean,
too.
yeah, well, the less compensated for being asked to do the same job and undercutting unions is why I call it the worst. But
No,
yeah,
for sure.
but I get to move on a bit from the topic of teaching. It's like, what actually did lead you into content creation and online political commentary?
So it's funny because a lot of people sort of wonder whether or not I was like running away from teaching or just had enough or anything like that. And that's really not the case. I enjoyed teaching and I'd like to think I was relatively good at it. But what I found was it during sort of the peak of COVID, I was getting increasingly frustrated with the Saskatchewan government and their handling of things. And eventually I just kind of picked up a camera and started talking and made a TikTok, and it took off. My first TikTok did about 70,000 views in the first day. And I
Oh,
was like,
damn.
"Oh, is this a thing I do now?" Um and then just sort of the passion for it emerged and I started enjoying it more and more.
So it just happened very organically, then. Like
Yeah,
there,
it very
yeah,
much so.
you didn't like wake up one day and you're like, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. But and especially as you've said, like you're very fond of your time, like in classrooms, and you treat being a content creator and a political commentator as being in the biggest classroom that you can
Mhm.
be in. Like, so and that I like that attitude, and I can understand like the very organic way in which like people just post things online and suddenly they've become internet famous in a way that you wouldn't have predicted. It's weird. I don't know if you ever read the novel Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
terribly homophobic fellow. So folks, don't give him money. But what's interesting in the book, and it's a good book and weirdly gay despite the homophobe who wrote it. like, Like you get what I mean, Steve. Like
That's often the way of it,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
This,
But and what's weird is the most accurate part of the sci-fi novel is where the protagonist, his brother and sister who stay behind on Earth. The most accurate part is that they just start shaping global geopolitics by posting on like the equivalent of Blogspot. Yeah,
but like it's prescient, right?
yeah,
Like I think that's one thing that has happened with the rise of social media is like people talk about it as being like a blight and all this stuff. And it's got its downsides, like to be very clear. Like it's far from a perfect thing, but like at the end of the day, there is a pretty significant element of democratization.
yeah.
Like, would somebody like me have gotten a voice in in a prior sort of setting
Right.
or world? Not really, to be honest with you.
And Twitch, in a way, it's like for folks who don't remember the age of public access cable. Once upon a time on Rogers on Channel 10, people in the community could just run a show even though they had no money, and it would air on cable in their local distribution area. And it was cool because you had shows that normally would not exist. And if you've ever watched the Eric Andre show and are wondering what that was parodying, it was parodying this kind of like public access cable like talk show. And in a way, like Steve, I feel like Twitch is kind of public access on steroids because anyone can just create a channel as long as they have a camera and a stable enough internet connection.
You're right, but in a way, like so. I actually this is one of my very niche opinions, but I believe that public access cable shows is arguably one of the purest forms of art. Because nobody
I
got
agree
rich doing
completely.
it.
Like
People did it for love of the game, and if you are watching at home or listening at home and you want to find the greatest public access cable show of all time, you can actually find it on YouTube.
Mm.
It's called Let's Paint, Exercise, and Make Blended Drinks.
Ooh.
And it is exactly what it sounds like. It is a man on a treadmill trying to paint and make blended drinks while doing a call-in show and just increasingly falling apart as a human being. And it is performance art and comedy like you have never seen. It will make your whole day.
That
But
that
I think,
appeals to me on a spiritual level, Steve.
oh, it's magnificent. Highly cannot recommend it enough. But when you watch those cable access shows, the difference between that and Twitch is full of a lot of people who want to make it big, who are like Twitch has real problems with clout chasing, right? Like there are people
There to make
whatever,
money. Like
yeah, but not even money, just attention. They'll do appalling things or shocking things to try to get the views,
I
try to
know,
get the clicks.
I know in that shopping district in Tokyo, I know that they've had to deal with like all of those gaijin, like just random like white people who are doing content creation every day, and they're just bothering and harassing people in like a in what sh- and like listen, it's a tourist popular area. Like you're allowed to go there and take photos. You can't like block a garbage disposal truck like which I saw someone doing it. So I get what you mean there. Like there,
But that also leads to the secondary form of content, the downfall content.
ooh,
When somebody does, some dreadful thing, and then immediately there's like
what's
all
that
I think of is
subreddit live stream fails or live stream bans where like it just posts every time a Twitch content creator gets banned?
something like that. But I'm just thinking of like the new dunking on pirate software industrial complex. Like there are channels who have made like 15, 20 videos just about this one guy just dunking on him because those dunk videos do hundreds of thousands of views.
I mean, there are channels that have made money for a decade complaining that there was a woman Jedi in their Star War.
Well, this has been a thing forever, right? And I'm sure you find this with your content too. The reactionary content gets rewarded big time. Like I always joke that if I just made a video called Pierre Poilievre's doo-doo from a butt, it would do 1 million views.
I've talked about how like every time I criticize Mark Carney for something in a column, like just boom, like compared to anything else I do. And like I write them because I want to and because the topic interests me, but I don't want to spend the entirety of my commentating like and opinion journalist career writing carny slop, like endless carny slop. Like,
See, that's interesting because if I make videos critical of Mark Carney, they tend to underperform.
huh.
The Carney cult is strong in a lot of ways. Like there are a lot of people who they picked him and he's their guy.
I get, and like I also saw your piece. I think it might have come out today or yesterday, like about Mark Carney's like popularity and his recent polling showing how popular he is. And like, admittedly, I get, on the one hand, I get it. Like intellectually, I get that a lot of Canadians have a very cargo cult mentality to political partisan labels and also to a politician, and they're like, they like you until they don't like you, and as long as they like you, if you talk about not liking them, they're rude. But once they don't like you, you can't talk about liking them except, or then you're rude. It's like there's a very groupthink culture in Canada, and I do not like the way it is implemented by centrists to suppress the left. I mean, I don't mind if they suppress the right a little, but don't suppress the left. Like, we're the good ones.
But there's also a question to be had here about, is that the experience of politics in Canada, or is that the experience of politics online in Canada? Because I really do think that there's a lot of sort of distortion of those perceptions that happens through online politics. Because I think that's one of the things that I found more than anything is you get some extremely online takes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and to be fair, I think that people who are online are self-selecting for people who have opinions and want to share those opinions. And that presupposes that, like, and for the reason I say have opinions is because a lot of people don't have opinions. Like, what's the meme of the political compass where the centrist is just the gray square in the middle and just the guy doesn't care about anything other than turning the burgers on his grill?
Right? Like, and that's, I think, a pretty common experience for sure.
A lot of Canadians just want, they want food to be affordable, they want rent or the mortgage to be affordable, and then they literally don't care about anything else. And I can't say I respect that kind of disengagement, but it's unfortunately reality.
Well, the question you have to ask, and this is sort of one of the things that drives my content, is do they have the tools to wrap their heads around what's going on in the political sphere? Do they have the skill set needed to connect with it, to engage with it? Or are they getting fed reactionary content and that sort of... And
not everyone can self-actualize out of that kind of situation. Like, when I write about Palestine and the genocide that Israel is committing there from a very critical perspective, you probably wouldn't think that I went to a Zionist day school from grade 1 to grade 8 and also kindergarten. Like, not everyone, like, completely does a 180 on what they're indoctrinated into as a child. Like a lot of people do need a helping hand, or they do need to actually be introduced to information that contradicts their established worldview because they may not seek it out themselves.
Well, and there's also the question of, are people getting given information with sufficient contextual information to understand what they're hearing? Right? We get a lot of drive-by newsing in our modern sort of media climate.
Yeah.
People get information dumped on them and they don't really get the surrounding context. They don't really get the background, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. They'll give you a story and they'll say, this is what these people are saying, but the other people are saying X instead. And then they just move on. They don't tell me who's right and who's wrong. They don't do the investigative work. And a lot of the time it's not their fault. It's just because they don't have like the money to do a lot of investigative journalism anymore, even at the CBC, where they're still a bit more plumb than people in private media, like, or privately owned news media. Like, and it's hard, but also being fair to all my journalist friends, but I do have some fair complaints. I think more interviews could use follow-up questions.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting thing when you watch you know, I
There's no
am no,
follow-up questions. There's never
yeah, I'm
follow-up questions because I
yeah.
think they say if there's follow-up questions, I won't do the interview. But then the journalist shouldn't do the interview. Like if you can't follow up on their answers and ask, well, hey, what do you mean by that?
Well, that's the curse of access journalism, right?
Right.
When it's difficult to get access to political figures without treating them with kid gloves, then you kind of wind up stuck between using kid gloves and not getting the interview at all. And in a lot of cases, politicians decide to, or sorry, the interviewers decide to just go for it all the same.
Yeah. It's like I don't have any legislative press accreditation, for one, because I'm way too partisan and tangled for that to be acceptable. But
Hmm.
but like I do have my press accreditation with the Canadian Freelancers Union. I'm a paying member of Unifor. Like I am a published writer, and I hold myself to journalistic standards of ethics and truthfulness in terms of sourcing facts and what I write about.
Hmm.
And like I intentionally try to not play this access journalism game because that way lies madness. It's like I'm technically still a liberal. I mean, if depending on what Bonnie Crombie ends up doing in September, we'll see how much that lasts. Like,
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. That's
yeah,
going to be very
yeah.
interesting.
But I also don't think anyone can say with a straight face that I haven't been more critical of liberals than a large amount of their opponents.
Very, very true.
Yeah, like I don't think they want me around anymore, to be entirely frank with you, Steve.
Well, this is it. Is lots of these parties don't want critical voices inside the building. They
Yeah.
just say, "Well, then you can leave."
And it's like it's weird because it's like I'm an opinion journalist, so like bias is the profession. Like I write
Mhm.
about my opinions and why I feel that way, and declaring the biases openly is what makes it okay. And opinion is indisputably journalism. Like I know there's been criticism of it, but like opinion with actual fact-based standards is journalism. It,
Well,
I know there's
I go back and
disagreement on
forth
it.
with that. I see. I don't refer to myself as a journalist. I'm pretty careful not to, because in my view, a journalist is doing original reporting. What I'm doing is commentary
Well, that's
and
actually where I've
analysis.
started to get into trouble, Steve. I've started doing some original reporting.
Oh, yeah, that's always a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Like when I'm out doing photojournalism, like is that journalism? Like when I take my own photos for columns of real world events happening, like when I go to a protest that the pro-Palestinian marchers are doing and I take live photographs and describe like how police are responding in real time. What is that called? At a certain point, I just accepted to myself, I'm like, I should hold myself to the standards that a journalist would hold, and I should declare my biases openly, and I will let the people who consume my content and my, whatever you want to call it, really, I'll let them make their own judgment on it. But I am accredited with the people who accredit journalists, apparently. So, uh,
That's some.
that's something. It means that the next time I go to one of those rallies, they won't think I'm a cop, which unfortunately happened because my hair was too neat.
Well, this is why you got to grow it out.
I am growing that out a little. I'm getting the waves, man. Like I'm trying to get some flow. Like
There you
I
go.
do have some flow now. Like, but in the hot weather, it's hell. Like the humidity is not great for the flow. The flow becomes frizz.
I had shoulder length hair for a fairly long time, and I cut it off because it just got way too hot, and I had had enough.
I go in phases. I'm not feeling the need to cut it yet. Eventually, I will feel the need to cut it, and it will be the right decision in that moment. But this is also the right decision in this moment, and everything in their place and their time. I'm just living my Zen thing, man.
Just stay in the moment. That's the
No, yeah.
key.
It's like people are like, Jake, you seem angry a lot with all the things you write, and I'm like, no, I'm angry, but I'm calm. Like I'm calmly angry. Like I'm chill and
See,
angry.
I get accused of being angry all the time, and it's like, no, I'm not angry, but I do view politics and current events through a moral lens.
Yeah.
Like I really think, like at a certain, you kind of gotta believe in something and
We are
stand for
allowed
something.
to judge people on their principles, I would hope. Like if so, and I think that the people you vote for do represent your principles in a respect. Like if you vote for someone when they say openly, yeah, we're going to do this, then yeah, you do bear some responsibility for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Like limited responsibility, mind you. Like, I don't mean that you should say that you should like obliterate a people because of an election 20 years ago. Wonder which
Mhm.
country we might be talking about.
Very, very vague reference.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm playing that vague game. I already said it by name earlier. But one final question before we go into our break, though, Steve. As a Twitch creator, do you remember the era of Justin TV?
Oh man, I didn't that eventually morph into Twitch?
Well, what
That
happened
that was like
for,
the
yeah.
Wild West of
Oh, yeah.
streaming, man.
Yeah, it's like what happened way back when, for those listening at home. Twitch was originally just for gaming. And the same people who owned Twitch set up a separate site called Justin.tv with the exact same software and interface. And you could even use the same accounts, but they just wanted all the non-gaming content on a separate site. And eventually they got rid of it, and all the whole just talking category, chatting category on Twitch, like sort of formed once it rebirthed on Twitch proper, because I think they realized along the way, why would you segregate them into two separate sites? Like, if people are paying for subscriptions to a streamer, what does it care what they're streaming as long as they're following copyright rules?
Well, this is it. I think there's a lesson to be had there, where fragmenting your brand and fragmenting your audience really is a problem, and it's something that you've got to be careful about. Okay, you ready for your Twitch fun fact of the day?
Ooh, yes,
You
please.
you were talking about the just chatting category. Do you know what one of the largest categories is? Just watching people sleep. Just people stream when they're sleeping.
That feels better than the hot tub category on Twitch, to be honest.
Well, my favorite thing about it is it's listed. The category is "I'm only sleeping," which is even funnier when you realize that category is actually based off of a 2005 Windows game called "I'm Only Sleeping."
Ooh, we like deep cuts to PC games. Like,
and so yeah, it's the I'm just looking at it now. It is the 60th game in the Reality on the Norm series. It's a point and click game.
Yeah. Well, Steve, that gives me a new last question then. You've unfortunately given me ammunition. What is your favorite PC game or Mac game from the 2000s, from that Windows XP, OS X, like Tiger era?
I mean, the first thing that pops into my head is probably Fallout 2.
Valid.
Man, I love that game.
I respect that. Mine in that era was just Halo Combat Evolved. Like, I had the demo like on my Windows XP laptop and then my MacBook for like 2 years until my parents finally caved and bought me a disc copy on eBay.
So I was an Xbox kid. I started out with Xbox, so I was definitely a Halo fan for sure. Although the Flood were so annoying.
Well, it's funny you say that because I remember being like 10 years old and I didn't know about the twist. I was just playing for the first time and I encounter the Flood and I'm like, holy shit. Like my 10-year-old mind was blown, and like then you have even more twists and turns. Folks, if you have not played the original Halo games, go buy Halo the Master Chief Collection on Steam. Like, I shit you not, you can usually get like 6 games on sale for $10. It's absurd how cheap they go. Like, the story of if you were turned off by the broy culture in the 2000s of Xbox, the story of these games is actually really good. Like I don't mean like Oscars good, but like it's very like enjoyable, like action movie, like sci-fi, like plot. Like there's so much that's quotable, especially in stuff like Halo 2 and 3. Like, it's like Tartarus. The prophets have betrayed us. Like Keith David just delivering it with just such like sadness and forlornment. Like it. Oh. God, I'm glad to have grown up in that childhood. Like,
Keith David is one of the greatest of all time. Especially because his voice and everything is just Keith David with varying levels of enthusiasm.
Oh yeah, like him in Halo, him in Spawn, like the animated, like back when HBO used to do adult animated like action, like
Oh, the Spawn cartoon was so cool.
I know, like that, and like stuff like on Liquid Television on MTV. Like I loved Aeon Flux, which I was
Oh,
way too
iconic.
young to be watching Aeon Flux, but I loved Aeon Flux.
That's for me when I was a kid. It was on Space Channel. There was heavy metal, and I was like, "How am I allowed to watch this?" And
I
then
miss when the
because my
Space
parents had no
Channel
idea
was
what it
the
was.
Space Channel and not just endless Star Trek reruns. But there's so
I
much.
mean,
Yeah, I like the
there's
Star
something to
Trek.
be said for Star
Oh
Trek
no, yeah,
reruns.
I like this. I like Star Trek, and I get that there's so many shows now. You can fill an entire 24-hour lineup with that without like repeating anything in the day. But nonetheless, I miss the science fiction that was not Star Trek.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, folks, thank you for entertaining our quick interlude about nostalgia of days past. Don't go anywhere, and we will be right back after the break. Today's episode of It's Getting Pretty Late with Jake Landau is brought to you by me. Folks, all of my work is available for free with no paywall at jakelandau.ca. But in order to keep writing and recording, I need money, because money is what makes this show go round. So, if you enjoy my content or find it informative, please consider a paid subscription at jakelandau.ca/subscribe. And please leave a 5-star rating on the show in your favorite podcast app, be it Apple, Spotify, or a secret third thing. Thank you, and enjoy the show. And we are back from the break with Steve Boots and our 3 headline topics, and also Steve's cat and dog, who are both delightful. Yeah.
Yes, this is Princess Peach and Boo Boo, and they are an uneasy peace treaty has emerged between the two of them.
Is Boo Boo from Yogi Bear and Hanna-Barbera?
It is. It absolutely is. That wasn't his name originally, but every time I like encounter him in the house, because when it's a cat, you just sort of encounter them in the house. It's more like having a roommate.
Yeah.
I'd go, "Hey, Boo Boo,"
I get what you
and
mean.
it just sort of stuck.
God, Boomerang was my childhood. Like, I watched that back when you could still get American satellite in Canada before they cracked down on it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. That's one final moment of levity before we go into some depressing headline topics, but also a nice one. And as you folks know, we do 2 headline topics of national interest, and then 1 headline topic with a more local focus, just to make sure that every part of the country gets a nice spotlight on some very important news stories that otherwise may get overlooked. But our first headline topic of the day comes from CTV News, from Joe LaFaro and Matt Grillo in Montreal. And the headline goes, Quebec man warning Canadian boaters after he was detained by a U.S. Coast Guard and put in jail cell. And according to his reports, he was out fishing in what he says was Canadian waters, and the United States Coast Guard sailed in and claimed he was in American waters, even though he claims very affirmatively that according to him and his instruments, he was in Canadian waters. And then they detained him after they pushed his boat and forced it to capsize, which seems needlessly aggressive, especially since you appear to be invading Canada. But, just a small, polite invasion. The Yankees wouldn't be so rude as to do it otherwise. And he says he was fishing near Venison, Quebec, which is roughly 50 kilometers north of the United States border at the northern tip of Lake Champlain. And from the map I see in front of me in the CTV News article, he seems very far away from the United States border, from the Morse's Line that divides it, as it's called. He also had scrapes and bloody welts on his knees from when he capsized, because it was obvious, so it's not like this was a very aggressive and violent incident. And eventually he was released after a few hours, I believe, once they realized that they may have stepped too far. But my question for you, Steve Boots, for your no prize question of the day, and if you answer correctly, you win a no prize for pointing out the obvious.
Ooh.
Yes. Inspired by our friends at Marvel Comics. Yeah. For our no prize question of the week, is it good when armed Americans start crossing the border to seize Canadians and imprison them without explanation?
I'm going to go with no on this one.
No is the correct answer. Congratulations, Mr. Boots.
Although, did you see the U.S. Coast Guard statement? They claim that he was approximately 65 yards south of the U.S.-Canadian border.
Well,
which, like, here's the thing. I'm not questioning this guy's story at all. I believe he believed he was in Canada, but, like, it's always tough with this kind of thing because, like, how does anyone adjudicate that? Like, he's going off of his, did he have instruments or was he just
he borrowed
landmarks
the
and references?
He borrowed the boat, but also, like, from his own story, like, he's saying he wasn't anywhere close to the border. He was like, he was only 15 kilometers off the coast, which like, and also, like, I'm not in a mood this year to give the Americans benefit of the doubt when it comes to anything regarding the border or law enforcement or basic social harmony or cohesion.
Well, and I think there's also something to be said for, like, is this really a threat to the United States? Like, what are they actually worried about?
Well, they've got quotas, don't they? Like, and
well, so this is the question: is all, like,
they're just making things up so they can fill the quotas.
I mean, potentially, but for me, it's when you see just massive sums of money being spent on border enforcement, they're going to look for every goofy thing they can think of to enforce. They're going to, when the only tool is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, right?
Well, doesn't that make you so happy that the Canadian government passed Bill C-2 and now Americans will be able to access private data and Canadians and people who visit Canada without any warrant?
So as far as I know, they haven't passed C-2 yet. I think it's still in second reading.
It's still in second reading? I thought that one. I misread David Moscrop's piece. I apologize, David Moscrop.
It is indeed still in second reading.
Okay, so let's not pass that then, because
I really hope we don't.
One of the places they can subpoena and get warrantless records.
Sorry,
no worries.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Pet wife. Well, pet owner wife. The pets are having a great time. But it's like, one of the things you can issue, they'll be able to get a subpoena for, the warrantless subpoena, is for records from healthcare facilities. You know what's a healthcare facility, Steve? Abortion clinics.
Well, so there's that, and there's also gender affirming care.
Yeah. So it's like, essentially we are ratting out all the trans people and the women who come here to flee, like, authoritarian American laws.
Yes. But, like, it's always the C-2 is such a cursed bill, though, because it's the
I mean, it feels like a cursed government.
True. But the Carney government has this way of rolling out very reasonable things mixed in with extremely unreasonable things.
Well, that's how you get the unreasonable things passed. Like, it's not an accident.
Like, one example that pops into my mind is one of the parts of it is about precursor chemicals to drug manufacturing, that it makes enforcement applicable to those too. And, like, yeah, reasonable enough. And then it's stuff like, searching your mail without a warrant. It's like, wait, hold on now. Less interested.
And the reason that, like, they have to resort to those kinds of, like, totalitarian, absurd, like, overreaches of like, authority is because they know it's not a problem that the government can solve by criminal lawing hard enough. Like, I know, like, especially when they're talking about precursor chemicals for drug manufacturing, like, I remember in New Zealand, there was, after the bust up of the Mr. Asia cartel, which prevented opioids from being trafficked into New Zealand. People were able, with like basic codeine over-the-counter products available at the pharmacy, using basic household like cleaning supplies, they were able to like synthesize that into like higher strength opioids, and courts weren't able to prosecute it because if you just separated the tools into two separate parts of your house, they would just be normal items you would have in your house, and it would not be something that a court could reasonably say beyond a reasonable doubt is proof of a crime. Like, so as long as they don't find you with the so like, yeah, it's like, obviously going into a bit of a rabbit hole there, different than the main topic, but you get the idea. It's like some of these things, they're just, you can't stop it by making it illegal or by doing absurd overreaches into people's like private lives. At a certain point, you do actually have to address the root causes of why things like drugs plague society. But if you did that, then you might have to challenge the austerity capitalism that drives our politics. And we would never do that, would we, Steve?
It's just, it's funny because like, I always say like, in the war on drugs remain undefeated.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is something that I'm always kind of like, it's not quite analogous, but it's kind of analogous. It makes me think of sort of my time as a teacher, because if you tell somebody under no circumstances are you to do this thing, then immediately you're creating mystique. You're creating this whole thing where like a bunch of people are just going to say, well, if I'm not supposed to do it, that just makes me want to do it so much more.
There were so many kids doing drugs when I was in high school. Like literally, like I remember one time I was 15 or 16, I bought weed from someone in the washroom, and he had a fairly professional operation. He had a fucking like scale to tear it out. He had nice little baggies with logos on them. And I'm like, holy shit, man, when this becomes legal, when Trudeau keeps his promise, you're going to go far.
And now he probably has his own dispensary.
Yeah, now he's doing great, and he doesn't need to worry about cops. And now he's also like, listen, folks, do not sell drugs to children. But also, it's less offensive to me when it's one 15-year-old giving weed to another 15-year-old.
Well, and for me, like I wasn't
again, don't give drugs to children, for the love of Christ.
But like, I'm not even necessarily thinking about drugs. It's just anything. It's just human nature that as soon as you're told that this thing is strictly prohibited, immediately you're just like, well, that just makes me want to do it all the more.
You're telling me there's a cultural fascination with taboo?
Yeah, who knew, hey?
Yeah. Someone should tell everyone with a fetish ever.
Can't imagine.
Yeah. Alrighty. Moving on to our next topic. A city, according to Global News, but not actually Global News, because psych, it's a wire report from the Canadian Press. City fines Montreal church for hosting MAGA-affiliated singer Sean Feucht, or I don't know how to pronounce his last name, and normally I would make sure, but to be honest, Steve, he's such a terrible person that I don't care.
Yeah, so this to me is such a classic example of the Streisand effect. In that, before this controversy, did you have the slightest clue who this guy was?
No, but I also
me
I also didn't know about Bob Villain or Kneecap, to be frank, before they said their things, and people may flame me for that. And it's funny because, Steve, I actually was on conservative talk radio a few weeks ago, like being asked my opinions about Kneecap and Bob Villain, and what I'm laughing about now is all these same conservatives who said those people under no circumstances can be let into Canada are now saying that nobody should judge this right-wing MAGA individual for what he said, and some of the things he said are that nobody other than Christians should be allowed to hold public office. He called the murder of George Floyd the miracle in Minneapolis, which is genuinely one of the most horrific things I've heard a human being say about he's anti-queer, he's anti-women, and also he's affiliated with the Proud Boys, with, if I'm not mistaken, are a registered group in Canada. So the question actually in my mind, Steve, is how did he get across the border? Like, once you're in Canada, people visiting do have the right to charter rights and freedom of speech. But we did have the right to deny him at the border, and if he's associated with the Proud Boys, why did we let him in at all?
So I struggle with this because obviously I think, you know, I'm no expert on this guy. I'm no expert on what he said or what he's done or what he stands for. My concern is that, like, this sort of reactionary wing of conservatism, and this sort of, not just reactionary wing, but this sort of, I'm trying to figure out the right term for it. There's a certain breed or strain of conservatism that requires assumed victimhood, to say, like, you see how they're trying to silence us, you see how we're the real victims here. And my fear is that this sort of reaction to it,
That it's
and
created a martyr.
Yeah, and it, like, think about how much his profile has been elevated in Canada as a result of
In
this.
Canada, to be fair, but he was already at the White House a couple of years ago, like, not a couple of years ago, but like, but he was at Trump's White House, like this one, like he's known to, he's already a known figure in America. So I don't know if we're going to Streisand affect him to that much more prominence. Like, and I think there's a fair point at which we should say at what point, like, if he wasn't a famous musician, Steve, would we be having this debate? Would we be saying that someone associated with the Proud Boys should be let in so that we don't elevate them to prominence? The problem is that they are prominent and that we need to not have them in our society.
So my point really is, like, if he was just doing his concerts as planned without the media brouhaha, who would have gone? Who would have attended?
More people than I would have liked, probably. Like, I don't know.
It's existing fans, right? It's established fans. It's people who are already supportive of him, already agree with his beliefs.
Right, but
right. This sort of stuff has raised his profile and expanded his reach a lot. And that's what I struggle with, right? Because, like, of course, this sort of stuff is valid to criticize and valid to express concerns about. I worry that the online reaction to it has created a new sort of right-leaning pseudo-celebrity in Canada who did not have a ton of a profile.
Yeah, I get what you mean
completely
about how, because, like, I mean, I already just said, and I made the point on the radio a few weeks ago, like, Bob Dylan and Kneecap have both elevated themselves in prominence to an extent by making very blunt commentary on the genocide of Palestinians. Like, is that why they did it? No, not necessarily, but it's indisputable that it did increase their prominence, and that the attempts to block them from entering countries and to prosecute them criminally increased their prominence further.
Well, and this is exactly it. But the other part of it is, whatever powers are being used to shut down somebody like this guy could just as easily be turned around to shut down a band like Kneecap or shut down pro-Palestinian protests or messaging.
Exactly. And I know I don't feel comfortable trying to travel across the United States border anymore for the commentary that I've written. I mean, at one point a few months ago, Steve, when we were really in the elbows up shit, I remember writing Canada should freeze and starve the treacherous Yankee.
Gosh.
Which might be a little bit harsh.
Just a smidge.
Just a
yeah,
tad.
That's. I think, you know me. I'm pretty. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool pacifist, and I am very much a firm believer in sort of just minimizing harm and minimizing risk and all those sort of things. And so when I see somebody like this, who's a couple of small concerts got canceled, and as a result he's now found a way to a massive audience, to me there's a net negative.
True
there.
But I think also those are a lot of those are private venues, or they're not, like, they represent only a segment of the public and not the entire country, and they also have a right, the free speech and free expression right as well, to decide who they allow to perform in their venue. And I mean, think if you're a Jew and you own one of those venues and you see this guy saying that people like you shouldn't be allowed to hold public office, is it fair to tell that someone like that, yeah, but you don't want to give him a profile by giving him what he's asking for? I get it. But also at a certain point, you do have to take a stand, and some people it just is impossible to deplatform, and there are ways we have to address them that are not deplatforming.
So what would you suggest as being the sort of path forward on this sort of situation?
Well, I mean, I think I made it clear at the start, he shouldn't have been let in the first place. And once he was let in, we got in a tricky pickle. And it wasn't even really for anything he said that he shouldn't have been let in. It's just flat out for being associated with a registered group. And because, let's be entirely honest, Steve, if it was a brown man associated with a registered group, do you think they would have let that one go at the border?
I mean, I don't love speculating about that kind of thing, but to me, what it comes down to is if we start to me, I see the slippery slope. I see if we start saying well, they're affiliated with a problematic group. It's well, what if somebody's supportive of Palestine?
Right.
Then you say, well, are they Hamas affiliated? Right. There's very easy leaps that can be taken.
I know. It's you want to make sure you don't give people the ability to do harm. And on the other hand, you're well, but some groups are bad and some groups are good. And this, I feel this is ultimately what this whole the Kneecap and Bob Villain debate, and then this one immediately after. I think it is very cleanly exposed that a lot of people are very inconsistent, and that they will support it on their side, but they will not support it on another side. And when you point out hypocrisy, they're yes, I am a hypocrite. Who fucking cares?
Well, so this is it.
And that's hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy is a power thing.
Yeah.
Right. It is saying yeah, I can do whatever I want.
No,
I'm going to tell you what to do, but I can do whatever.
It's literally they'll kill an innocent person and you'll be damn, that's hypocritical. You really showed them. God, you're right. It's it would be nice if there was consistency in how these things are applied. But also, when they're not applied consistently, you can't unilaterally disengage, or the other side can just hurt you. So, yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer to this one. I think this is just one of the hard problems of living in a society.
Well, and this is it, and whatever power you use to suppress this sort of guy, you're immediately turning over to the powers that be to use to suppress you.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why I'm reluctant.
Well, that's why I'll just never lose power. I'll gain power and then I'll keep it forever.
Yeah, that's
and
exactly
I'll require IMAX to build actual IMAX movie theaters and not fake ones.
Yeah, just become political Goku and get more and more powerful every time.
Oh yeah,
problem solved.
I gotta take a sensu bean. Yeah, the whole left wing needs to take a sensu bean in this country. We are beat the fuck up right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they've really been thriving since the 80s, but there's definitely room to grow.
What are our NDP premiers provincially? We've got David Eby, who's occasionally neoliberal, and we've got Wab Kinew, who's got the allegations. I want an NDPer in this country I can just be proud of without having to say but after.
I am forever fascinated by the story of David Eby, because I think that's what establishment politics do to people on the left. Dude literally wrote a book about how to sue the cops.
Yeah. I know.
And now he's you know what we need is more cops.
well, who needs principles when you have all this institutional power? That seems a lot more fun.
Well, I also think that giving up some of those principles is the means to holding that institutional power. And I think they always think, well, if I get in the right spot, I can do a lot of net good by giving ground on this thing.
Well, that's our last question then for you, Steve, before we move on to our next topic. Does that mean you believe democratic socialism is folly?
I believe it is at present the best available option. I think you get I think the idea of the revolution and the idea of revolutionary politics in the world as it is are fairly unrealistic. Not necessarily impossible, but fairly unrealistic with the surveillance state and police militarization and all this stuff. I think the
But if the
idea of any sort of,
revolution is impossible and reform is impossible, then what does a good socialist like me do?
I don't believe reform is impossible. I think that there are examples that we can point to throughout Europe of countries like the Netherlands is a great example. The Netherlands was a relatively conservative society up until they sort of found their way to good public services and more public ownership of public goods in the 60s and 70s through massive public pressure. I think in a democratic society, in a properly democratic society, there are ways to institute change without revolution. And I really think that, capital and mainstream political power have worked very hard for the last 50, 60 years to make revolution borderline impossible. Because if a revolution would ever kick up, think about how quickly the military would be deployed. Think about how quickly this would all sort of tear people to shreds, right? Think about how quickly it would be used to just lock everybody up.
But at the same time, like, look at Afghanistan and tell me with a straight face that the Canadian or American or any Western military can actually maintain control long term of people who don't want to be controlled.
Well, so this is it, though, is in Canada, we have, for all its flaws, a democratic society, right? If a large enough portion of people desire change, there are paths to that don't involve violent revolution, right?
So Canadians just aren't violent enough.
I think what it comes down to is a lot of revolutionary people with revolutionary political beliefs skip over the step where you've got to change hearts and minds. Right?
You're telling me you got to convince people to risk their lives? That's
It's not even that. It's convincing people that socialism or communism or leftism in general are sort of the way forward. A critical mass of people need to believe that. And I think once you get out of terminally online spaces, that you just wind up with, I think people don't realize just how small that segment of the population is when they're within that segment of the population.
In North America, the only real growth I see in it would be Zohran Mamdani, because and he's making socialism palatable to a lot of New Yorkers from a very practical perspective. He's like, I'm going to make food cheaper, I'm going to make rent cheaper, and that is ultimately the thing. And we are in a time where people are very more distrustful of capitalism than they were before. It's like ultimately like when the wider the wealth disparity gap becomes, the more discontent grows, and the more people are willing to entertain both socialism on the one side and fascism on the other side. Like, yeah.
Well, and this is it. Socialism is becoming less and less of a dirty word,
No. I mean, the fact that I can say I am and somehow still be a member of the Liberal Party is absurd. I don't know if that could have been possible 10 years ago, and in a few months it might still not be possible.
Lots of MPs, Liberal MPs, claim to be socialists. Like,
okay, my apologies to Minister Stephen Guilbeault, or former minister, or current minister. Yeah, current minister. He's one of the ones who didn't get bounced by Carney. Like, congrats to him. Like, winning the game of political survivor.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, well, we have rambled way off topic, so we will go on to our third and final headline topic of the day. Good discussion, though. Having a great time. Good vibes. And our final headline topic, our local story from the wonderful world of Atlantic Canada, including Newfoundland, Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. Mark Carney has kept a promise, and the promise will help people. Shocking, but true.
Yeah, who knew, eh?
Yeah, written by Alex McIsaac for CBC News in PEI. Ottawa makes good on promise to cut Confederation Bridge tolls and ferry fares in Eastern Canada. For those who are unaware, and if you are unaware, then Canadian education failed you. Part of the deal for Prince Edward Island joining Confederation was that the federal government would build a bridge and that the tolls would be a certain price so that they could be connected to the rest of the country, because obviously it wasn't going to work otherwise. But tolls have gotten, quite frankly, rather burdensome for cars. So, as part of a campaign promise to Atlantic Canada, Mark Carney promised to lower tolls on Confederation Bridge, as long as several other Atlantic travel fees for numerous interprovincial ferries. For the bridge, which connects PEI to New Brunswick, prices will fall for a car from $50.25 down to just $20. Transport trucks will also only pay a fat rate of $20. And this is really good as well. Like, there's going to be significant cuts to lower the price for Marine Atlantic by 50%. Marine Atlantic is where Nova Scotians get a large majority of, not Nova Scotians, Newfoundlanders. It's where they get a large majority of their food. It's where a lot of resources come on to Newfoundland and Labrador. So there's also the three ferries are from Ile de la Madeleine, Quebec to Sully, PEI, Wood Islands, PEI to Caribou, Nova Scotia, and St. John, New Brunswick to Digby, Nova Scotia. So it's not just beneficial for the people who live there, it makes tourism much more attractive. It makes it easier to get the goods in and makes food cheaper for these people, because a lot of things simply aren't grown on the island, obviously. So I'm very happy with this, and it makes sense for the federal government to do it, because these are all interprovincial routes, and the federal government does have a responsibility for interprovincial transportation. But British Columbia, Steve, they're a bit unhappy because BC Ferries is going through their own stuff. And David Eby, as we're just talking about, the premier of British Columbia for the NDP, is unhappy, and he's like, well, why is the federal government not giving us money for BC ferries too? And I mean, the answer is very simple, in my opinion. Those ferries go from BC to BC, so they are provincial transportation, and thus within provincial jurisdiction. And provinces, their premiers always make very clear at every first minister's meeting that they don't want the federal government stepping into provincial jurisdiction. So I don't see what the problem is. Why would BC be upset, Steve? They don't want the federal government stepping into their provincial their powers and what is constitutionally theirs.
It's always the same thing, man. It's money. It's money, right?
Yeah. I'm chuckling under my breath here. I remember at the leader debate, I think the English one in the last federal election, when Yves Francois Blanchet just starts, what did he start yelling? Interference, about Mark Carney, spending money on pharmacare or dental care or something. It's just
this is it, though.
They want money, but they don't want to be accountable for taking the money.
This is forever the curse of Canadian politics,
well,
right?
Federal politics. I have grown sour on federalism, Steve. I honestly think the balance of power between the federal government and the three territories is what it should be, and we should weaken all 10 provinces to be on the same footing as the territories.
I think that this is such a classic example of we have very wiggly jurisdiction on a lot of stuff, right? There's so many things that are considered shared responsibilities. And in a lot of those cases, the federal government will control the purse strings and leave the provinces to manage it. The problem is that's becoming increasingly untenable as provinces just don't manage anything. Right? The
and it's so easy
for
provinces to run austerity governments and then beg the federal government for money, even though they both have the same income tax tools.
Well, and also claim that the federal government is ripping them off for not paying their fair share, or whatever it may be.
And I'll say that for things that are wholly provincial jurisdiction. And it's absurd to me. And this is why I've grown sour on federalism, because no matter how you divide up the division of powers, it will never actually work with the fact that in the real world, people do not care who the politician is. They just want the politician to solve the problem.
Well, yeah, and that's the classic thing, right?
And
But
yeah.
also, this is politicians relying on the public not understanding what's going on,
But
right?
it
Like
ultimately
this
goes
is
in their backfire because they do it. You're right. They do it because they're like, it's not our job. It's the other level of government's job. And they all point the blame at each other like the Spider-Man meme. But the end result is people just lose faith in democracy as a whole. And they start looking to things like fascism because it promises order and stability. It also promises a lot of other terrible stuff, as a Jew, I can confirm. But
Hmm.
when you create a system of government where no one knows whose job it is to do what, and therefore no one does anything to help anybody, you delegitimize democracy as a system.
yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And
And
this is it.
yeah.
Is but like
I wish people
you-
understood democracy needs public relations. They need to make a good, we need to make a good impression on voters, and making people vote mandatorily like in Australia or Brazil is I'm not opposed to it, but that won't suddenly make people actually care. It'll just make people go in, check a ballot, and click, and then collect their democracy sausage, which is a real thing that you get in Australia after voting. And we should do too.
that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about the democracy sausages.
Folks, think of a hot dog, but instead of a normal hot dog bun, it's wrapped in a single slice of bread. Not sandwiched between two slices of white bread, just wrapped a single slice of white bread around it. But it's free, so you can't complain about your democracy sausage.
It's a hot
Yeah.
it's a hot dog as eaten by somebody who's run out of buns.
So, but yeah, it's like if anything, I feel like most of the power is given to provinces. Maybe we'd be better giving some of them to municipalities, yeah,
but the
perhaps the
municipalities are
ability to-
creatures of the province. The province could still pull the strings, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. I just want, a nice, casual, uncomplicated constitutional change. I know everyone says, oh, we can't change the Constitution in this country, but I think we should do it anyway.
Just spend a couple of months in court, you'll be fine.
No, well, yeah. I mean, but the other fun thing, though, Steve, that a lot of people don't know about our Constitution is there's actually a different amending formula if something doesn't affect every province. If something only affects one province or a couple provinces, then an amendment only needs the consent of the federal parliament and that province or the couple provinces that it affects. So what's funny to me is whenever BC complains about the cost of their ferries and the federal government not pitching in enough, or someone complains about not subsidizing oil enough, or not energy enough, or not subsidizing some other pet jurisdiction enough for healthcare, I'm like, well, you can upload it to the federal government anytime you want. You can make a constitutional amendment for just your province, making that the federal government's responsibility. And I'm sure the federal government would be happy to never deal with you again. Obviously you need a willing but that's the other thing I bring up too when it comes to the Catholic schools in Ontario. People in Ontario don't realize other provinces already got rid of this by doing exactly that. Quebec amended the Constitution for their province to get rid of Catholic schools by passing a law, and then the House of Commons passed the law. And the really funny thing about amendments, Steve, for the end of the fun civics lesson rant, is that if the Senate doesn't pass the constitutional amendment, after 6 months, the House of Commons can override them with a second vote. So amendments are really not as hard in this country as people make them out to be, but it might require what Europe calls multi-track or multi-speed federalism, where some provinces are willing to closer integrate with the federal government than others. And I mean, Quebec has unique powers. They have control over immigration when other provinces don't. So I don't see why any province can go the other way and tie themselves further into the federal government. And I think that would be an interesting solution to the problem of whose job is this?
Yeah, and that's I really think maybe the answer here is just, some sort of constitutional convention on definition of roles and definitions of responsibilities, because there's just too many shared elements of responsibility, too many shared levels of government, too many shared sort of, I don't know, just too many shared things between different levels of government, to the point where everybody just sort of shrugs and says it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah, like I think we say that our democracy is better than the Americans, but I'm not actually sure of that. Like people forget that the Americans started theirs a bit earlier than ours, and we haven't lived quite as long yet under our same constitutional structure.
Yeah,
On the
and
other
this is
hand,
it.
was America a democracy for that long, or did it only really start with the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act?
Yeah, very true. It's all like,
I
this is
love
the thing is
contradicting myself a minute after I speak.
but the conflation of American and Canadian politics is a problem too, right? Like there are lots of people who are like, well, states' rights. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, it
Well,
doesn't quite work like that.
although the irony is, I would say that provinces are in some ways stronger than the states are in the United States. Not on criminal law, though. It is actually crazy to me in the United States that somehow criminal, like the punishment for murder, can change based on what state you're in. That's insane. Like,
Yeah,
how does the
it's
value of a human life change on what side of a subnational jurisdiction you're in?
I mean, bail rules are different province to province, so I think there's some sort of overlap there.
That's true, too. Valid complaint. Credit to Steve Boots. Second no prize awarded. Uh, but yeah, Steve, for our final question of the day before I let you go, do you think that we will ever have a version of Canada where the provinces and the federal government get along and have a healthy cooperative relationship?
I do. I do. I really think the heart of what is putting the brakes on federal provincial cooperation, honestly, is this sort of screw you conservative movement that has emerged in provincial politics and in federal politics, where there's just sort of this collective understanding of like, well, you can't tell me what to do.
What
And this sort of like,
oppositional defiance disorder is a political ideology.
it really kind of is. Like if you go into polling numbers, you very quickly see that every on basically every major issue, the conservatives are split from the rest of Canadians entirely. And so I think that sort of oppositional approach to politics is what's holding us back.
And democracy does require like consent of the loser. It requires saying, okay, we lost this election, that's fine, better luck next time. But if they don't think they'll ever win, then well, it's already starting to become a bit radical, isn't it?
Well, and this is it, is if you don't believe you can win democratically, what do you do next?
Right. Because if
you try to massage the systems a little bit to get your way.
Because it's like, say what you want about these conservatives, but the problem isn't lack of principles. Sometimes the problem is that they have heinous, horrible principles and that they cling to them.
I really do think that in most cases, like these are folks who have convinced themselves that they're the good guys and just have extraordinarily narrow worldviews and a lot of unchallenged assumptions.
I know. It's like bigotry can be a closely held, sincere principle. It's also terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I admire your optimism, and perhaps someday we will live in this dream world where conservatives can get along with the rest of civilization.
It's so funny because I was basically say like there's sort of a running joke of like I sit here and say imagine a better world, and conservatives say no.
Yeah. No, I suffered and you should suffer too. It's like the person who's like, there shouldn't be a cure for cancer because I didn't have a cure for cancer. And I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy, but that, like, no.
Yeah, well, and this is exactly it. Like there's so many, like in my view, the idea is that the left and leftist people should provide an aspirational view of the world, something that we can aspire to and work towards rather than just saying how everything sucks.
We shouldn't let centrists and the right co-opt the idea of an abundance of like housing and an abundance of Like the fact that they successfully managed to co-opt that word sucks, because like it's good branding to say that you are going to lead to a society of plentifulness where like housing will be cheap and affordable and accessible and in like good locations. Like it does frustrate me that the left like did not take an aspirational view on that one. Like they're aspirational on public housing to be sure, but unfortunately like we see public housing used more often as a specter to block private housing than we see actual public housing being built.
Very much so. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm a YIMBY. I don't care what kind of house it is, as long as someone can live there. Yeah.
Well, and this is it. We need lots of housing at huge scale, for sure.
Indeed. Well, Mr. Boots, thank you so much for coming on our program today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Folks, you can look at any of his content online. You can find him as Steve Boots on Twitch and on a bunch of other places. Hopefully we'll have you again soon, and great having you.
Really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Steve Boots, everybody. And that'll do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much again to Steve Boots for joining the program. You can find him online under the name Steve Boots. And go check out his Twitch, or check it out on YouTube after it's on Twitch, because he's very, very good. We will see you again next week, folks, with a new guest. And as you know, it is always a surprise who the guest will be. But I do have a hint for you. The Force is with him. Have a good night, everybody. This is the end of the show. Bye.